Hello, everybody! This is Those Aren't Biscuits, episode 126. I am your host, Owen Adams, and with me, as always, is Jonathan Cadotte. And on the screen, as not always, is Overwatch. How you doing, Jonathan Cadotte? How you doing?
Well, I can't lie. I'm in a bit of a crisis, Owen.
Did you chop down my cherry tree? Is that where this is going?
That's right.
I've heard this story from Americans before.
How terrible at folklore are we? Where it's like, you see other countries like, oh, he led all the snakes out of Ireland, or he slayed a dragon with a shiny shield. I chopped down a tree.
Right, it's not a very noble story either, because he's like, the little thug chops down a tree, then gloats about it. Everyone's like, George Washington, I'm starting to wish you would lie a little bit. That's nothing to be proud of, George Washington. That's not something to brag about. It's
like,
just that.
Georgie.
I cannot say a lie. You smell. I can't. Fuck you, George Washington.
That was the first instance of, no offense, but...
I cannot tell a lie. You're ugly. And one day I'm going to be president, and you'll still be ugly.
No, that's the one time we're like, I'm going to be president someday. Quit lying, George.
Yeah, whoa, George Washington. Yeah, I can get behind that. If you guys are new here, this is a weekly talk show that we do. Used to be called a podcast. These days, it's more of a general talking show. And we talk about pop culture stuff, movies, video games, comics, all kinds of stuff like that. And these days we've been playing games while we go a little bit, because that is a little bit different. We've been streaming these on the PS4 now, because we've been doing it as a live show. It's pretty good. And yeah, I'm kind of liking these. I think this is working out pretty fun. We're going back to Overwatch because there's an event on, and we haven't done any. I haven't done any Overwatch in a long time.
Yeah, I'm kind of liking these. Oh God.
Echo! Time warp! I've been watching a lot of The Flash. I feel like I'm wary of time phenomena at the moment. So,
as you should be. As we all should.
Yeah. I've just...
No, what I'm saying, though, is I am having a crisis.
You're having a crisis. I'm sorry I cut you off tonight.
Yes.
Fill me in, John. Yeah. How are you today? You talk for a little bit, and I will get a game going.
Well, here's the thing, all right? There's a common theme with our show, right? Something that I generally bring up, if not every week, but every couple weeks.
Are you at war with the local fast food establishment once again?
I think I have to give up fast food.
I would just like to say hello to Ashton and Harry Boy in the chat. Welcome. How you doing? You're giving up fast food. Yeah?
Because as of last week, you kind of gave me... you said something that kind of stuck with me. Said, maybe these people know who I am, and they're just fucking with me. Right?
Right. They have heard the show. This is my theory.
With me. Like, well, I know they haven't seen the show. I know our viewership.
Yeah, we can, if there's one thing we can count on.
But I'm thinking, maybe this is just a thing. Maybe this is just a thing that I have to live with, right? But what if I go to a fast food place I don't normally go to? How could they possibly fuck with me then? Right?
How could they know you?
Sure. So I went to a place I never go to because I don't particularly like the food, but I was hungry and I'm like, I'm gonna test out this theory, if maybe nothing will happen to me.
Right.
Well, to be fair, the restaurant employees were not the perpetrators this time. It was a fellow customer. One of my own brethren.
Does he work at a fast food restaurant near you?
I don't know.
Okay.
So I get there, right? And like I said, I never go to this place, so I don't really know the menu all that well.
What's it called?
And Culver's.
Okay, fair enough.
It's not a real big chain. I think it's actually fairly localized. I don't know. Like it exists within a region, you know?
Right.
And so I'm looking at the menu, and it's a huge menu. And the last time I had been there, they had changed it since then. I was like, oh, okay, I'm just trying to, you know, work out my order. And this guy comes in and he stands behind me in line. And so I do the polite thing. I look at him like, hey man, I'm just looking. You can go ahead of me. As you do. Like that
right.
is fast food etiquette 101. And he goes, no, it's fine. It's like, oh, okay, man. I guess he's looking too. I'm actually gonna echo off of you.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah. Anyways, so I'm just waiting, trying to work out my order, and I'm having a hard time. I am struggling. All right, I can admit that I'm probably taking longer to work out my order than a typical person would. But I gave him the go-ahead. All right, I gave him the thumbs up to skip me in line. All right.
You don't get to complain after that point.
Right.
Is the echo better?
Well, then yeah, I don't hear it.
That's cool. I turned the volume
down. Then he
down.
goes, like, are you ready yet? I was just flabbergasted. I was like, what? I told you to go in front of me. Like, what more do you want? Like, I gave you carte blanche to go and put in your order. This is apparently your place. Like, and I was just dumbfounded, and like, I wanted to just yell, right? But, like, you know, I was trying to, I'll just be like, you know what? Fuck you, dude.
My response in that situation would be to immediately take as long as humanly possible.
Well, all I can do is like, no, I'm not ready. You know, I was just dumbfounded, just absolutely dumbfounded by the situation. And so I was like, no, I'm not ready. The dude still refuses to go in front of me.
Do you know what you missed between that, right? What you missed in between that is, in the original timeline, he agrees, right? And he swaps around with you and he goes first. And an assassin's bullet, stray from Russia, comes through, a micro bullet comes through and takes you out, changing the future, right?
Micro bullet.
And in this corrected timeline, just after he says, "No, I'm good," he gets filled with blue light and leaps to... Sam Beckett leaps out to help another one, and the original guy leapt back in and was like, "Oh, this guy's taking forever."
Come on, let's go.
Absolutely. So as you noticed, just to mention the Overwatch for a moment, I put us on Mystery Heroes. There is actually a mode for the summer games called Lucio Ball that I haven't played yet, but I figured we could give it a go after a few rounds of this. Would you reckon?
We can. It's not great.
I haven't played. Yeah, but there's a loot box I don't have for it.
Yeah.
Hello to all chaos. Welcome. As you say, guys, drop in, ask questions. We'll be doing sections of Q&As in the meantime.
Sure.
So you think you've got the fast food curse? Is that what you're saying?
I think it's just... I think it's just time for me to hang it up for a while, you know? Just... I mean, regardless of, like, the health reasons, you know? You know, clearly I should probably not eat so much fast food, you know, for my health.
Right.
But I like fast food. I really do.
Well, that was good. No, I'm glad. I'm glad you're taking this responsible stance to avoid minor embarrassment. But not for the health, you know?
Right, exactly. That would just not be...
That wouldn't be cool. That would be lame.
That wouldn't be keeping with my, you know, my persona if I was going to make a healthy decision.
Right. But if you're going to make a sort of a... It's a very British decision to make. A man was mean to me in the line, therefore I can no longer go to this genre of restaurant.
Well, we have been doing this podcast for almost 2 years now. Over 2 years.
You think I've rubbed off on you? Ew. Sorry, I mean influenced you.
I hope not.
And hello to BB's World, how you doing?
Hey, BB.
Playing a little bit of Overwatch, yeah. Doing the podcast. So, I have something cool. I watched a film I want to talk about.
Real quick, alright?
Oh, okay.
Because,
no, it's fine. No, it's just all John stories today, is it?
Because
Continue.
BB's World is in the chat, I was going to ask her a question.
No, feel free.
Yeah, I am going to feel free. It's half my show. I have been thinking about trying to watch anime.
Oh, interesting.
I never really gave it much of a shake.
BB is definitely the person to ask, I would say.
Exactly.
Good job I suggested that.
My question is, what would be a good starter? A good starter anime. You know, like a training wheels anime. You know?
I would watch an anime that was just Bulbasaur, you know? I really would. They're adorable.
Oh, I imagine you would. I know you would. Some key things. I am not a huge fan of misogyny, which I know can be a thing in anime. I don't really particularly like the
misogyny genre. What are your favorite genres? Horror,
tell me I'm wrong.
Horror, sci-fi, and misogyny. Yeah. The 3 types of anime.
Oh, will someone please kill this? There we go.
That reminds me, how are you getting on with The Simpsons?
I've watched a couple episodes. I had to kind of finagle some of the files a little bit because they weren't.
Files? Is that some sort of dodgy DVD you have purchased?
Oh.
Some kind of ineffective streaming service? But no, it's working. It's working out.
Yeah, I managed to consume a episode.
Good.
Because of said problems.
That's fine. There's no rush. I was interested. Which one did you watch?
Well,
the first one?
Something happened with the DVD listings, and what said was the first episode was a Christmas special?
That is the first episode.
Seriously?
It wasn't animated first, but they had to send the... they weren't happy with the animation on the first few, so they sent them back to the animation studio to be redone, and what ended up being the Christmas special ended up being the first. Basically. Okay. So yeah, that is technically the first. Did you enjoy it?
But I did not. We're going to get into this in the show. That episode.
We're going to get into this in detail in the show, but I'm curious. Yeah. Did you have a good time?
Well, I didn't actually watch the episode because I thought there was something wrong.
Oh.
And my first assumption was, oh, maybe it got listed backwards. So I watched episode 13 instead first.
What's that one about?
Which is the episode where Marge calls into a psychiatrist.
Oh.
And
yeah, I know the one.
Her and Marge, or her and Homer go on a romantic night, and the kids are left with a crazy babysitter.
Right. That was the first one animated. And when it came back from the animation studio, the wall, like, it looked like Rocko's Modern Life, like the walls bounced and doors bent when they opened and things, and they had to send it back and say, no, that's not the look we're going for, and ask him to do it again. That's why it ended up being the last one. I think it also looks the worst, still. Did you enjoy it? I'm curious.
I did. Mostly.
We are going to discuss this when it comes to that episode, but I will give you the same warning you give me to Arrow. Season 1 is rougher than the rest of the show.
Okay.
But at least it's half the length.
That was one of the things that kept on like occurring to me was the voice work is really not good.
No.
As in like the acting's fine, but it's clear that the actors didn't have a full-on grasp of the voices that they wanted to use yet.
Yeah.
Because Homer's voice kept on switching from traditional Homer that we all know to like a much deeper, normal sounding voice.
Well, he originally, Dan Castellaneta said he originally started doing it like Walter Matthau, but that it's actually really difficult to maintain like that. So eventually he just moved it like down a little bit. Beavis World in the chat says, I would suggest, depending on what type of series you like and dislike, Death Note or Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay.
Okay, so sounds like John needs a Hulu sub. I recommend Cowboy Bebop, Death Note, and Psycho Pass from my limited anime viewing. I will second Cowboy Bebop. I think that's the anime show that transcends anime. Sorry?
That is one I've heard as well. Cowboy Bebop. And I have actually listened to the soundtrack of it, and I really enjoy the soundtrack.
I would definitely start with that, and don't even think of it as an anime show to begin with, because it's a genre-transcending work, I would say. In a good way.
Fair enough.
We are just skirmishing away here. But yeah, we for people who don't know, we're going to do a show where we're covering all of The Simpsons on this channel, one season at a time. But no, I would say that episode is not my favorite. I think it's pretty rough. There are a few others that are pretty rough, and then there are some that are really good. And I'm not going to give it away, but there are some in season 1 that are some of maybe my favorite Simpsons episodes, but not many. Season 2 and 3 is when it starts getting excellent, I think.
And just real quick, I have heard that as well, BB's World, about the 2 Full Metal Alchemist series. What show? Wisecrack. A YouTube channel that I really enjoy. They just did a philosophy of Full Metal Alchemist, and I think that's the one they focused on, was Brotherhood. And it sounds really cool, from a philosophy standpoint. So
interesting. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's a satisfactory endeavor.
But what movie did you see, Owen?
Well, it was another horror movie, and that always puts us in an interesting place because I know you don't enjoy watching horror movies.
Right.
So it's always tough to like, hey, you should not watch this, but it was good. But I saw a movie called It Follows, and
is that the STD one?
It is, and it's fantastic. It is such a good film. I watched it not really knowing much about it. And for people who have never watched the podcast before, when I talk about movies, I don't do them in a spoiler-free way, or we don't when we do them on the podcast, because then we can kind of talk about it in a little bit more detail. So I suppose I'll ask you up ahead, John, are you worried about this movie being spoiled for you?
Not particularly, no.
So it's a really, really good film. It follows a girl called, I think she was called May. I've completely forgotten because I'm terrible with names in movies. But she is seeing her boyfriend, who she's been seeing a little while, but her friends haven't met him yet. And they go to the movies, and then they go back to his car, and they park, and they have sex, as teenagers do, in real life and in the movies. And
fuck, I am down with the movie already. Let's go.
And after this happens, he chloroforms her. And
Jesus.
I hope you don't get the same response. Yeah, I was glad that didn't end the same way.
Do.
Yeah, still down.
Let's go. What? Not seeing a problem here.
Chloroforms her in a really disturbing scene, and you don't really know what's going on because she's just consensually had sex with him. So it's kind of weird that then he would, kidnap her. But she wakes up in a it's like the floor of an abandoned building, basically. It's like a dilapidated building on a hill, and she's tied to a chair, And when she comes to, he explains to her that he has been cursed with this thing, and that he acquired it through sex, and that he has now passed it on to her. Does it follow? It does. And what it is he tells her, this thing's gonna follow you. And when it follows you, it's gonna... if it catches you, it's gonna kill you. And it's gonna follow you until it kills you. And if it kills her, once it's killed her, it's gonna go back and kill him. So the best thing she can do, and he tells this, he says, look, I'm doing you a favor. I had to get rid of it, but I'm giving you the information, you know, so you know what to do. Right. Pass it on as soon as possible. Pass it on to someone who's going to pass it on to someone else, because if it doesn't, you know, if it kills the next person, it'll come back for you right back down the line till it gets to the first person, right? So it needs to keep...
sleep with a hole.
Right. That's basically the advice. And then he sees this thing, and he says, look, it's coming, I've lured it here so you can see it, you need to see it so you know I'm not lying. And it takes the form of this naked woman that is just walking slowly towards them. And what this kicks off, one of the most terrifying films I have ever seen, where she spends most of the movie being followed by this thing that can appear as anybody. It can look like anyone. And all it does is just walk towards them, trying to kill them. Whoever it's chosen, it just walks towards that person one at a time. And when it catches them...
Does it show how it kills them?
Yeah, physically violently. And then later on, even more repulsively than that. But it appears as people you love, or people you know, or people you... whatever's going to unsettle you the most. And it only ever walks towards you slowly. But the most important thing is, only the person who's affected, and maybe the last person who was affected, so like the last people who've been infected before, only people who've been infected by it once can see it, basically. And so what's really kind of interesting about this is it combines two kinds of horror tropes, the kind of plague thing, the infection thing, with the unstoppable pursuer, you know? So it's
also the whole, you know, the virgins live sort of thing. Right.
So it's eerie in that the guy who does this to her, he is absolutely irresponsible. It's a terrible thing he does, but he's also terrified for his life. He's weirdly sympathetic in... I mean, he's not. He's also repulsive, and it's not a redeemable act that he does, but everyone who's been down this chain is just trying to pass it on, you know what I mean? And then there are interesting things where, you know, there are situations where she's in where, for example, people who don't necessarily believe her are volunteering to help her pass it on, and things like that.
Yeah, so I bet they are.
Right, the theme of sex and sex in a power imbalance and what counts as coercion and things like that comes into the film as well. And it's also really unsettling because the film's set in, like, no particular time. The hairstyles and the cars all seem to come from a different time period. And yet one of the characters got this clamshell, like, it's like a physical clamshell. It looks like a makeup case, but it's an e-reader. So nothing gels in time in the film. It all every time you see someone watching TV, it's black and white. It's like Batman the Animated Series, do you know what I mean? It's got that kind of weird... time vibe where you can't place it. So right from the start of the film, you know that you are... These are normal people and they talk like normal people, but you know you're not really in reality. It's oddly unsettling like that. And when this story kicks off, it's genuinely frightening. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about the plot beyond that, because the actual mechanics of the plot aren't the most interesting thing about it. But the way it generates fear is really cool, because it's very rare that this thing actually catches up with them. It's always walking. So, for example, if they get in a car and they drive to the other end of the country, it's still following them, but it's following them at exactly the same speed. So, what's interesting about it is, through the course of this film, very often, they're not in imminent danger, because you can choose to get yourself a reprieve. You know that if you get in the car and drive away and travel somewhere where it will take you weeks to walk, you buy yourself weeks, but it's the always knowing that it's coming for you, you know? That it's always walking towards you. And the kind of the best way this film communicates it is often through the film, you see it. And you see it walking towards them. But they don't see it. And the camera doesn't focus on it, and it doesn't... the film
is always in the background.
Right. Often you will just see a person just walking towards them, unnoticed, uncommented upon. And it's really kind of remarkable like that. The way it... it never... It's never defeated, and it's never defeatable. There's no question early on of defeating it. They do make an attempt, and I'm not going to tell you how that goes or how it ends because I don't want to focus on that necessarily. But it's so interesting how this film generates horror from something that is so uniquely different. The concept of having I mean, there is obviously a lot of people have made comparisons to like AIDS and things like that, and I think those comparisons are invited to them. You know, it makes sense, but it really does tap into this horror of having something inside you that is coming for you all the time, that is coming to take you down, unavoidably so. And that old sort of contradiction that, you know, it walks towards you slowly, therefore it's more frightening than if it chased you down and beat you, you know?
Thank you. Right.
It's actually a really remarkable film, and what's really interesting to me about it was, when I first started watching it, I was like, this is kind of trashy. You know, like, it's about a monster that chooses its targets based on sexual transmission. But actually, it's very not trashy about it. It's kind of sensible. Sensible is the wrong word. It's thoughtful, you know? Which not a lot of horror films are.
Right.
And yeah, I can really recommend it to anybody who's looking for a different horror film to watch. It is one of the strangest and yet most gripping horror films I've seen in a really, really long time.
Well, I think it's kind of a good idea. I'm coming from someone who hasn't seen the movie, but I'm aware of the tropes and some of the stigmas and stuff that go with horror movies, and I think it's actually a really interesting choice to have a antagonist or whatever that goes after someone because of sex, and not in a subtext sort of way.
Right, but a literal way.
Right, because you see it a lot with, you know, Friday the 13th and things like that, where the subtext is the impure are targeted. You know, the whore gets killed, and I don't mean to use that language, but that's kind of what they always use.
Right,
when describing this.
That's the subtext, yeah.
Right. You know, the promiscuous ones are the ones who get mutilated by the you know, the machete. You know? And like, it's kind of interesting that they've established a thing where I guess the sex is the salvation, you know?
Right.
In a way.
It plays with the trope in the most direct way. It is literally the people who have sex who get infected by who get the death fate, but it is literally a requirement to have more sex to get away from it. Mm-hmm. And it's a very interesting way of handling the trope. No, it's a really good film like that.
What would you say, you know, because, you know, as you know, what we do here, we read into things a little bit. What would you say would be the inherent message then?
Well, I don't think the I don't think the film's necessarily aiming for this, but I think as a subtext, what it tends to do is for a lot of people who end up infected in this, well, I say a lot of people don't end up infected, but the subtext is often that it's like the first time as well, you know? And I think what subtext it sends is a much healthier message, which is that when you are young, your first time, or even your first time with someone, is very possibly an inherently shitty experience that's going to leave you with consequences you will regret, right? Mm-hmm. But that moving on and having sex with other people is also inherently necessarily a healthy step to moving forward, potentially. Do you know what I mean? But
I get you.
If there was a subtext, that was it. But that also, you're theoretically passing those consequences on to someone else, you know?
Right.
So I don't know. It's interesting. I think thematically it's much more complex than the old horror tropes, but I think it's so clever how it actually comes together to subvert that old trope, because that's immediately what I thought of when I saw the movie as well. The old trope that the people who have sex in horror films are the ones who die. To be so overt about it was, I think, really clever. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a... I think it subverts the trope so much, I don't know if it recontextualizes well. You know?
Right.
But it is frightening. And it's frightening.
Oh,
like,
I imagine.
There are scares in the movie when the monster catches up that are more visceral, physical scares. But the biggest source of fear in this film is absolutely just the sense that it is always coming. You know? In fact, one of the most frightening scenes in the movie is just a scene where they drive away to the beach to get some time to think and decide what they're going to do, the cast of characters. Many of which at this point don't believe her that this is happening, you know, but are coming around. And there's a scene where they're all sat around the beach, they've had days to rest and to rethink, and it appears. And it just appears quietly, and no one else can see it, so no one can point it out. And the character who it's stalking, she sat in a deck chair with her back to it. And it's just a long, what would be dull conversational scene playing out while it approaches. And it's one of the most terrifying bits in the movie, really. And it plays on that so well. So yeah, I would actually recommend you watch it. Even as someone who doesn't like jump scares. I normally only recommend when it doesn't have, like, any jump scares. Like, I still think you'd find Get Out pretty tolerable, you know?
Right.
Which just doesn't have moments like that. But this one, it has a few here and there, but I think you still might like it. I think you might find it a little bit different. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty willing to check it out, I guess.
It's good. We have a few comments in the chat. BB's World says, also in the thought-provoking type of series, Ghost in the Shell, standalone complex is one I would highly recommend. Oh, hold on. Oh, damn you. Is one I highly suggest, as well as good luck on anime viewing and let me know what you pick. So there you go, that's some extra suggestions. Ghost in the Shell, very well known, very beloved. I don't know what that particular series is like. I've only seen the movie myself.
I've seen a little bit of it. Mostly because I think it was on... They used to play anime movies on the movie channels, like HBO and Showtime and stuff like that, but like really late at night.
Yeah, we used to get them on the Sci-Fi channel here.
And Ghost of Shell was one of them, and one was... There's one I always remember, and it was called I, Goku. And it was a movie. And I don't know if it's based off of like a manga or a long-running series, but it was basically about this guy who had a cybernetic eye that could basically do anything. And he just took on this corporation. It was kind of interesting.
A few other comments. Okay, says, does it so just have a summer and a winter house at different places on the Earth, so the thing can't catch up? That makes sense. It's a pretty good one, I suppose. But you never know when it's going to get there.
Timeshare.
Happy Halo Fish says, what if you isolated yourself in an island in the ocean or something? Well, this doesn't come up in the film, but it doesn't say that it couldn't swim. I would imagine that the mythology they would settle with was it would just walk across the bottom of the ocean until it got there, you know what I mean? It would just walk across. Okay, it says, go have a hookup in Europe and fly back to the States. You would need to live somewhere totally unattainable, I guess.
But I mean, to be fair, like if the thing can walk on the bottom of the ocean or whatever, nowhere's unobtainable. You know.
Right. Maybe a mountain. Maybe it can't climb. You'd helicopter up.
Right. You just hear the Ride of the Valkyries playing, and there it is.
Speaking of anime, so one of the first anime movies I ever saw was actually people who may be familiar with the series Bubblegum Crisis. They did a spin-off of Bubblegum Crisis that was edited together into a movie called AD Police, which was about people who hunted. It was like a lot of animes. It was a rip-off of Blade Runner.
Right.
But it was really good, and one particular, like, you know how what was so weird about anime when you were a kid was the weird way it would combine, like, occasionally really fucked up sexuality
Yeah.
with odd sci-fi concepts, and like it just, I mean, we learned later on that it came from Japan, but early on it seemed like it had come from the fucking moon. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like no human being had ever felt this way when you know, like, what is this?
Well, no, absolutely. Like that I Goku movie that I was telling you about. There's a scene where it's a little person with a big old beard, looks like Torbjorn essentially, who is, I guess, how do I put this? Riding a naked woman as a Harley. You know, as like a motorcycle.
Oh, come on, that's normal. Really... We've all done that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Are you commenting on my relationship again?
Are you the Harley or are you this little person?
We take turns. Sharing is caring.
Yeah. But yeah, no.
Right, so that one of these sections of AD Police, and it's burnt into my mind, was called Bite My Tongue. And it was basically the story of RoboCop, right? This police officer got killed, right? But in an explosion. Mm-hmm. And they rebuilt him with modern technology on the Force, right? But the only bit of his actual body that was left was his tongue, right? And I don't know why. Like, to this day, I can't figure out why they decided this, but they were like, we should just build the robot, but let him keep his human tongue, right? That would make sense.
Right. Sure, I mean...
Because he can use that.
What would you do?
For solving crimes. But he was having this torrid love affair, kind of illicit, sexy affair with the female scientist who was supposed to be, like, monitoring him. And working with him as the robot. And so, very many scenes of this were, like, sexual explicit adoration bestowed upon the tongue, because it was the only place he could feel sensation. And he was saying he would bite his tongue because it was the only place he could feel. So imagine RoboCop, right? This is the best way to describe this segment of AD Police. Imagine RoboCop, but RoboCop's just got this sexy, painful tongue that he's always biting and licking, and women are caressing because it's the only place he's got any sensation left. And that would just be...
Guess, it's very prehensile, too.
No, it's just a very human-looking animated tongue that he keeps biting. And it wasn't hentai, it wasn't very sexually explicit. It was just... It was this weird... but it's really stayed in my mind because it was actually good. It was this story of a man who had been brought back as a robot police officer, and the only human sensation he had left was through this tongue. So all sexuality, all physical expression, all pain was ultimately focused on this tongue, and his own tongue that he was just biting till it bled every day. And actually, it has really stayed with me, that weird segment of a movie. And that's the first anime I ever remember seeing. BB's World says, anime is just weird in general, and I love it. Yeah, I can get into it sometimes. But it's not as weird as it used to be. Like, this is part of why I don't really enjoy modern anime as much. I feel like we swapped what used to be a really, really sincere weirdness for really kind of manufactured, look what anime weirdness that I don't enjoy as much. And I kind of miss it when it felt like it was so earnest and came out weird. Like, I love The Room, right? Like, I really love that movie because... Have you ever seen a movie that tells you more about its director than that film? Like, I could watch every James Cameron movie or every Steven Spielberg movie and not really come away knowing that much about David Cameron or Steven Spielberg. But after The Room, I feel like I've met Tommy Wiseau. Like, I really feel like I know him. I mean, I think he's a prick.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, right. And I think that's amazing. With anime, like, obviously none of it was as bad as The Room, but you got a feeling that there was such a humanity to it that you just didn't get in American cartoons and TV shows. A willingness to just say, I'm going to talk about the fact that I think it would be weird if you were a robot and you only had a tongue left, and a scientist got down to her underwear and then rubbed herself all over your metal parts, licking your tongue. And you were like, yeah, let's talk about how we feel.
Let's go. Right.
Right.
Sounds like a Friday to me. What? That's the sincerity you were going for?
Yeah! No, I mean it. Because that's the thing. As stupid as it was, sometimes, as weird and crazy as it was, you never got the feeling that they were like, I'm gonna make a cartoon where there's a guy with a tongue and everyone's gonna be weirded out by it. You got the feeling that at the base of that there was some guy who was gonna go, yeah, this is my War and Peace.
They will know me forever.
It's like, have you ever seen the animation series Inuyasha?
Fuck you, Miyazaki. Got this.
I hope that's in the next Studio Ghibli film.
Fuck you, Miyazaki. Got this.
No, the whole bite my tongue plot. Plagiarized.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Scene for scene, except it's like a real cuddly, like
it's a Totoro. A robo Totoro. In its underwear, rubbing itself over another robo Totoro. My neighbor Robo Totoro and his tongue.
Yeah, my neighbor the tongue.
My lover Totoro.
My plaything Totoro.
Yeah, I'd like that. My prisoner of war Totoro.
My little fuckboy Totoro. Just... Ham!
There's an extended scene where the cat bus comes around the corner and it's in a full-on gimp outfit.
Yeah, cat bus shows up. I got some pipe lane motherfuckers who are about to go medieval on this ass. God. Childhood's gone. Just not even ruined, just obliterated.
You're the one that said my fuckboy Totoro. I take no responsibility.
So I saw two movies this week.
Uh-huh.
One of them is older.
No, we can move on from this. I totally agree.
No, we can keep going if you want. Like I can.
No, tell me about your two movies, Jum.
Well, I don't know if I want to anymore. I kind of like the idea of my fuckboy Totoro.
Beavis Well says, cute Tracer skin. Oh yeah, the Uprising skin. She looks like a stewardess. I kind of like it, though.
Mm-hmm. I got the punk skin. If you want to look at me, Owen, real quick.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Hey! I should say, by the way, I know I'm being terrible at Overwatch. That's because I'm mostly trying to focus on doing the podcast. And it's me
Howling
playing
Castle.
at my normal.
Yeah, let's just turn all of Miyazaki's films into a crazy...
Howl's Screaming Castle.
Yeah.
Howl's Squealing
Pleasure
Castle.
Howl's Castle of Leather and Waffles. Just...
Howl's Moving Dungeon.
Oh, man. Oh, God.
Can't think of one for Spirited Away, though, sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I don't know, like, Dominated Away. Just...
Dominated Away. That just sounds like a Domino's Pizza sponsorship.
Maybe they'd be in on it, you know? Maybe they'd be cool with it.
Okay, says, I'd say some Doctor Who stories were as strange as anime. Namely, The Last Human. Oh, Cassandra. Moisturize me, yeah.
Yeah.
Cassandra's really funny because, people who don't remember, in Doctor Who there's a character called Cassandra who was supposed to be the last human. She had a fixation with getting, thinner, to the point where she was just some skin with some eyeballs and a mouth on a frame. But the funniest thing about that story is, at the end of that story, she dies. She dries out and she...
Explodes.
And they sold an action figure called Destroyed Cassandra, and it was just the plastic frame in a box.
That's
and
funny.
It cost the same price
That's
as all the
really
other action
funny.
figures.
That's really funny, though.
Yeah.
Like, I can get behind that. Like,
They have not seen me yet. Oh, I'm down. Beavis Will says, Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind sounds dirty as is. That's, yeah, fair enough.
yeah. I got a valley for you full of wind.
Shut up! Go on then, so you saw
man,
two
this
movies,
thing's
tell
not
me all
great.
about them.
Yeah, okay. So, which one do you want me to go? I got a newer movie and I got a movie that's been out forever. that
Have I
never saw
seen
before.
either of them?
One, I'm pretty sure you have.
Okay, do that one first. So I can join
Okay.
in.
Yeah, and it's actually more appropriate for our show.
I hope I haven't seen it, because it'll be hilarious now.
Hot Fuzz?
I have seen that. Have you never seen it before?
I never seen it before.
Oh, okay.
In
Fair
fact,
enough. Tell me all
the
about it.
only up until the other day, the only one of the Cornetto trilogy that I've seen was Shaun of the Dead. I
Which
still
is-
haven't seen At the End of the World.
I'll be honest, I don't think that one is up to
Or
the
At
standards of
World's
the
End,
other two.
Whatever.
I don't think you're missing out. But that's just me.
Alright. So, yeah, I saw Hot Fuzz, and it was just kind of one of those things where I was just cruising around on Netflix, and I came across it. And decided, why not? I'll give it a shot. And I thought it was really funny for the first hour,
Uh-huh.
and then I didn't think it was so funny anymore, honestly.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad towards the end. I just... For me, it's one of those films that had a really good premise and then didn't really know how to end it. Didn't had a really good premise but not a plot, I think.
The problem with it is that I thought it had a really good idea through the whole thing. I even liked the twist, you know, of like who was the ones behind all the murders and all that. What I didn't like was it seemed like towards the end they decided just to not have a movie, and instead we're just going to...
Right. The final act is one big comedy action sequence.
Right.
That doesn't end.
And but even more so than that, they don't even like try to plot that. They just use other movies for all their bits.
Which is not what Shaun of the Dead does. At all.
Right. Like, they straight up recreate scenes from Bad Boys 2 and Point Break. You know, which, to be fair, they name-dropped those movies earlier on. And so it's like, okay, I get it.
But the joke would have worked with just one of those.
Right. Or to do that, but then also have their own plot with it, you know?
Yeah. I certainly don't think it's a bad film at any point. But I agree. I think that it does much better in the first half. Because there is a genuine story moving through that first half. That first section. That is, in the same way as Shaun of the Dead, is equal parts ridiculous and amusing and moving and well thought out. You know?
Right. Yeah, I felt
not
the
very
same way.
moving, but
Right. But moving.
yeah.
Oh, shit.
I also think, but I agree with you completely, but I think the comedy, for me, Hot Fuzz, and I'm really glad you feel this way, actually, because it is absolutely how I feel about Hot Fuzz. For me, for the first half, I think it's actually better than Shaun of the Dead, but it doesn't land it.
I actually really agree. Simon Pegg, I think, is a really great comedic actor, but he's equally as good as being a straight man.
Yeah.
Which I think he did very well.
I think the conceit is really funny as well. That he's this no-nonsense big city cop who comes to a small town, and yet he's not the cliche at all. Like, for people who've never seen Hot Fuzz, Simon Pegg plays a hotshot cop who is so good at clearing up crime in London that his bosses basically promote him out of the city because he's making them all look bad.
Some of the greatest cameos too,
right.
By the way.
So they promote him out of the city and they make him basically they promote him but move him to this tiny village where there is no need for a hotshot cop because the village is so perfect. But as he spends more time there, it becomes clear that someone is killing
Everyone.
a lot of people for reasons that are kind of unknown. And I totally agree, it's one of the best twists when he comes up with what is this really tightly plotted, well thought out conspiracy. And it turns out to not be the reason at all.
Right.
Because he thinks that it's about someone who's punishing people for having an affair, basically, for like, it's like a sort of a Wicker Man kind of thing. They're punishing people who are violating religious laws, but actually it's just this cult that is killing people for doing things like having messy lawns and ruining the amateur dramatic performances and things like that. It's
right. Well done, Owen.
Yeah,
well
it was great. I got player of the game for it.
I'm still gonna give it to me.
I'm pretty pleased with that. What's great is I don't mind you seeing it or people at home. I think that's fine. But I like that the rest of the other team and our team got to see it.
You had to witness that glory.
Yeah. I'm pretty pleased.
I think, honestly, like, the reason I thought it was better than Shaun of the Dead at the beginning is because there was actually really clever jokes that kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I thought the funniest part of that whole movie was when he was trying to have that conversation with his ex-girlfriend at the crime scene, and they're all wearing the same outfit. He's like, Janine, I gotta talk to you. I'm not Janine, I'm Bob. You know?
Right.
And then later on, it's like, I'm seeing someone else. Is it Bob? I would never date Bob. And you just see that one guy in the background go, aww. Like, I'm dating Steve. Hi.
Yeah, it's really good. I also like, I mean, it's such a goofy joke, but the running joke with the duck, the swan that's escaped.
Yeah.
That everyone thinks is more important than all other crimes in the... in the town.
I love this Lucio right now. There's a Zenyatta who's all like, "Peace be with you." He just shoves him off the fucking bridge.
Are you in the game? Oh, I haven't selected anything. I'm being stupid. I also like
we're just skirmishing.
I like Nick Frost's character in that film a lot more than I like his character in Shaun of the Dead 2.
Yeah, and he kind of has like the most emotional arc.
Right. And some of the best jokes. I mean, I loved his fixation with his assumption that a big city cop must be like a cop from the movies is really funny. And that after they have those hours of conversations, my favorite joke in the movie is when the captain says, the sergeant says, "I think you've been watching too many films." And he goes, "No, he hasn't." Like, trust me, he hasn't. You've never seen Bad Boys 2? Have you ever jumped through the air firing one gun? You've jumped through the air firing 2 guns.
I think one of my favorites is just when he he thinks he really cracked it down, and he's sitting in the car eating the cornetto. He's like, "Get back to the station." But that's what I like about those, like, that style, and or like from Shaun of the Dead, it was like all the little jokes, you know.
Yeah.
And the first half of that movie is filled with them, but after a while they just stop, and you kind of like rely on a concept more than jokes. Like, oh, well, you now know that the town is a bunch of murderous, you know, busybodies who care more about, you know, the town and keeping out the outsiders than, you know, preserving life, and that's supposed to be the joke that carries the rest of the movie, and it doesn't.
No. And there were so many other ways you could have ended that. You could have had him trying to convince the other cops to go back with him, or like higher ups, and done jokes. You could have had them going back and pretending to go along with it. Do you know what I mean? There are so many other setups that could have ended that movie other than the long action sequence.
I mean, there had to be an action sequence, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that whole movie was leading up to that. And I'm okay with the gunfight. But when they started when they I don't know, when they did the second, like, swirl around Michael Bay shot, I was like, okay, guys, like, this has to stop.
Yeah, I still like the film. I still think it's a good film. I'm with you on that, though. I think that second half is really misguided. I do like,
I also think, although I want to say real quick, as far as I know, I've only seen 2 Edgar Wright films, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz.
Have you seen Scott Pilgrim?
Oh, I have. Yeah, that's right. So my thing with it is that I think he has a very interesting idea when it comes to cinematography, but I feel like also he kind of overdoes it with Hot Fuzz.
Right, well, he's the directorial equivalent of a comedy impressionist, right? And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but that's the joke, right? That's the setup. He is doing...
But he uses the same techniques for, like, Scott Pilgrim, and you do see it in... It's that frenetic thing where it's like... well, in Shaun of the Dead, it's like, okay, we go to my mom's house, we kill George... We grab Robin and we meet back at the Winchester, and it keeps on, you know, sliding and like frantically, like swapping.
Right, and it gets faster each time.
Next. Yeah, that works, you know, in those instances, and I think it worked really well in like Scott Pilgrim, because that's just the kind of, you know, movie that is. But in this one, like that first, like 45 minutes, I counted like there's like 16 like like iterations of that same shot,
Right.
and it got a little much, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. I think you might like The World's End, because I think The World's End has less of that. And what I will say for The World's End is, The World's End stays very plotty right up to the end. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's World's End is Edgar Wright doing... It's a bit like Super 8 as well, do you know what I mean? It's very much that kind of movie. It's taking on kind of 80s sci-fi. Okay. I just didn't like it, really. I just didn't find that one that funny. But I could see... I mean, it had its moments. But of course, the thing about each of those three films is they're all about taking on a trope from a certain type of genre movie while covering something else. So, like, World's End, underneath it all, is about growing up and getting older and changing, you know, learning to put away your childhood and be an adult.
Right.
And Hot Fuzz is about learning to loosen up a little bit, learning to lower your standards, but lower your expectations when they are unreasonable and things like that. And Shaun of the Dead's about being responsible. And then they have these genre films on top. World's End is the one where the underlying gag is not funny at all to me, really. But I think you might like that one more than Hot Fuzz, actually.
Here's the thing, it wasn't that I don't like Hot Fuzz. I think it was actually fun. It was a fun movie. There's parts where it just kind of fell apart for me.
Right. I think the reason I find World's End and Hot Fuzz a little disappointing is I think Shaun of the Dead's kind of like a masterpiece.
Right.
And even though I said I thought the opening half to Hot Fuzz is probably better than some of Shaun of the Dead, I don't think it's a better film overall.
Right.
By far. Shaun of the Dead's the only movie I went to see in the cinema twice. I've never gone to see a film again at the cinema in my entire life. But I saw Shaun of the Dead on a holiday with some friends, and then I saw it when I got back, and then I bought it on DVD the day it came out. And every time I saw it, it blew me away. Because that film is kind of perfect.
Yeah.
It's one of those rare films I think really deserves every bit of kudos it gets, you know?
Right.
But I don't think I've ever seen an Edgar Wright film that's ever hit that again.
I really enjoyed Scott Pilgrim. That is absolutely one of my favorite.
I have never seen Scott Pilgrim. I knew it was Edgar Wright, but I haven't seen it.
I think it's really great, but it also had a really solid source to work from.
Right.
And I think you should really check out Scott Pilgrim.
I always mean to.
Hey,
well done.
Game. I don't know how, but I'm just me sitting here.
Fair enough.
Not even really doing that well. I'm just like...
I will say this for Hot Fuzz. It has... I love Adam Buxton anyway, but it has one of my all-time favorite movie deaths. Adam Buxton plays the journalist who figures it out and tries to give information to the cops ahead of time. That is one of the most... I mean, it's really unexpected, the way it...
Well, you see it coming a mile away, but like how they depict it, it's like, oh god,
right? It's incredible.
I did have to admit, I love that bit at the end, and it is gruesome. But when the main villain, I can't remember his name or the actor, he falls on a spike that goes through the bottom of his jaw,
right?
And in any other action movie, that's death. But really, you probably wouldn't actually die from that. And they show him going, oh, it really hurts.
I like, I mean, it has the thing I like about Shaun of the Dead anyway, and Hot Fuzz, which is, British people don't do American genre inherently well. Whenever we've tried to do it seriously, it doesn't come off right. It just doesn't. Like, we've had our good genre movies, you know, we made good spy films, you know, and we can do different types of action. You know, Children of Men is a really great partly action movie.
I love that movie.
You know, it's such a good film in that respect. But what I like about it is...
Who directed that?
Do you know, I never remember. I'm gonna look it up. But what I really enjoy about it is... they find the inherent humor of setting the kind of things you see in an American action movie in Britain, and having people talk. And I don't think it's necessarily talking like British people, because people in other countries enjoy those films just as much. But the joke is they're talking like normal people in an American action movie, which is easier to do by having them not be Americans. You know,
right?
It's easier to create that
Americans
dissonance.
just aren't normal.
No, it's not that. It's that if you did it with Americans, it would be confused for an action movie. It would be confused for the real thing too easily.
Right.
It was directed by a guy I've never heard of, Alfonso Cuarón. Apparently, he donated
God, what else has
Gravity.
he done? He's done,
and Prisoner of Azkaban. The three musketeers of classic cinema.
See, that's what I wanted to see in Prisoner of Azkaban, is just one long continuous shot of them storming Hogwarts while Clive Owen carries a baby. You know, just...
Or Harry Potter drifting through space.
Right.
For an hour. Just woo. I'd enjoy that.
Okay, yeah, all right, BB. After this match, we will do some Lucio Ball.
We
Just
will,
for you.
yes. So what was the other movie you saw?
The other one
If you're done with Hot Fuzz talk.
Oh, actually, no, I'm not. Because I wanted to bring something up. Because I noticed, you know, like I said before, we read into things in this podcast show. And one of the things I noticed was this kind of running theme of like we're trying to keep our small town a small town, and we don't like outsiders, that sort of thing. Is that common in British culture? Like, not necessarily like, oh, we don't like outsiders, but kind of like like this preservation sort of thing.
It's less common than it used to be, but it's based on reality. And what it tends to be is it's kind of a class thing. So those towns like that, they tend to be relatively exclusive. You know, if you've got a little town like that that's a little village, you're not going to have a lot of working class industrial people living there, because they would live in the industrial towns and cities, right? Traditionally.
Right.
However, as the country gets more populated, as more and more greenbelt land needs to be built on and things like that, what you see is a culture clash, or as the people that would traditionally live in the cities move out. It's a little bit like... I don't want to say like it's the new rich, because these people aren't rich, but it's as the middle class broadens and the working class shrinks, and the affordability of things to the working class becomes better. So even working class people can afford to get their kids into dance classes and things like that, you know? Right. That's kind of what it is. These old towns that see newcomers as intruders a little bit. It's part of that, essentially. It's a feeling that the old people in the town remember how it was in the 50s. And as new people move in, and as social mobility increases, and as just the ability to... I mean, England's class structure is way more entrenched than the United States, but even in the US, you know, people moved around less 50 years ago than they do today, right? Just as a sheer practicality of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Imagine that in a country with a way more entrenched class system than the US. And that's what you're looking at, really.
Because I was going to say, like, there are similar things going on in America, and what I kind of didn't want to get political, but I kind of do, especially with recent events.
I think it's sort of inherently political. I don't think it's avoidable, really.
What I'm trying to say is that the way it works here, it's the same sort of thing. but it definitely leads to a much, I don't want to say more extreme thing, because I mean in this movie they're literally fucking killing people, but
yeah, but that doesn't happen in the reality that it's based on. It's more about being snooty to them in the streets and sending passive-aggressive notes. But it's worth mentioning, and this is something I'm not often proud to be British, but it's worth mentioning that this country has never had any political fascists like that. They've never had any kind of success in this country, because I don't think there's a lot to the British character, but I do think it's fair to say that historically, while we've always had racists, because every country does, very rarely have they had luck with a kind of burn 'em all kind of racism, because the general attitude of British people has always seemed to be, no, we don't want them living next door, but what they do 3 houses down is none of our business.
Right.
So it never gets very extreme. It's just a although I did find out once that the reason there are so few immigrant populations, I say immigrant, but ethnic minorities in the town I happen to live in, is because up until the 1970s there was an estate agent that the only estate agent in town wouldn't rent houses to anybody with an accent or a funny name, as they put it. That was their policy. But yeah, sorry, carry on. Didn't mean to cut you off.
So what I kind of was trying to get at is there is this feeling of, you know, the same sort of thing where it's like, oh, well, you know, this place used to be really nice back in the 50s, but things have gone bad, so clearly it's these outsiders who did it. Not at all taking account for, you know, different economic situations and social, you know.
Right. Yeah, we have that here.
Right. And that's what kind of leads people in this country into that. You know, we have to remove the outsiders, or these outsiders have now threatened our existence, right? And I don't know. It just seemed like a really, you know, as I don't know how much this is gaining traction over there as a news story, but we kind of had a bit of a tragedy.
Oh, it's big news here. The whole Charlottesville thing has been pretty big.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's kind of become a, oh, what horrific thing is going to happen in America this week sort of thing.
And yes, BB, I am indeed dominating with Mercy. I haven't even healed anybody. I'm literally just pistoling it and doing really well. I'm not in the mood to heal, sorry. We've got another Mercy on the team, so it seems kind of silly, you know?
Alright, yeah, sure. That makes sense. As I'm dying. Oh, hey, I'm back.
Well done. You got me to thank.
No. Did you use your ultimate?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Run away!
Oh my god, I'm being just pinned down here.
I just got a text from my girlfriend, who must be listening to the stream, because she just said that you need to watch League of Gentlemen, which I agree, that is thematically consistent with what we're talking about. You ever seen League of Gentlemen?
No.
I'm not to be confused with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the terrible Sean Connery superhero movie.
That's literally what I first thought when you said League of Gentlemen. I was like, the baseball movie with Madonna? Like,
League of Gentlemen is a sketch show in Britain. Although they try to think of it as a sitcom. It does feel like a sketch show, but it's basically about these characters who all live in the same village in England. And despite the fact that it is one of the most repulsive sketch shows I've ever seen, like, I'm sure you've seen British comedy. You know, sometimes like they have like genuinely repulsive characters and things like that. You know.
Yes.
All those characters are set up to be kind of gross or frightening or like weirdly unsettling. Some are nice, but it's this. It is genuinely very, at the same time, very true to working class rural England. So it feels very much like a real English village. And, like, some of the sketches are about... One of those sketches that I like are about... It's just a a British working class couple who, in public, get into the most vicious arguments and start to include more and more people around them in their hideous quarrel, more and more and more. And but there is a running sketch about these two this inbred yokel couple that run the village shop that murder outsiders that wander into their shop. If they find people aren't from the village, they will kill them. And that's it's one of my favorite sketches because the very first sketch plays out in the funniest way. A policeman comes in and he's got a picture of a hiker who went missing. And they're acting a bit suspicious, and he says, "Do you know? Have you seen him?" And they go, "No, we've never seen this man before. This is a local shop for local people. We know nothing about you, a stranger." And then, as the police officer gets his hand on the door, the wife shouts, "We didn't burn him!" And it's a really good sketch show. You should watch it. My favorite character on the show is played by Mark Gaddis of Doctor Who fame. If there's ever a person on Doctor Who you don't know who it's played by, it's Mark Gaddis. He was the guy who turned into the Scorpion in that one, but he's also been in lots of other roles. But he plays a vet who literally kills every animal. There's one brilliant sketch where he goes in to see a guy and he says, "Okay, she's through there. We'll sort it out." And he sits down and he goes through to the living room and there's a dog by the fire. And he goes, "Oh, little soldier, it's getting on in years now. Don't worry, you'll soon be at peace." And he gets out his syringe and he gives the dog a little injection and strokes it. Then the farmer comes in behind him, holding this dog, and he goes, "Here she is!"
Oh, speaking of animals, my cat just emerged from his bag.
He's been in there all day.
Just about.
It's great when they find something.
I was gonna check on him in a little bit and make sure he didn't suffocate.
In a little bit. You had that thought. You didn't decide to check right away. You were like, okay, if he's not back in 6 hours, I'm gonna check if he can breathe.
Well, when I had a thought, he would have been kind of done already, alright?
My cat's being really funny today because I bought my cat Toph. She like has this weird sense of what is right and what is wrong. Like things have to be in the proper place. You know what I mean? Like she likes things to be.
Your cat has moral impotence?
No. She just has a sense of like things being as they should be, right? And one of the ways it's really weird, right? One of the ways she compartmentalizes is cat food. She eats from the same bowl every day. She knows where her food goes. But if you give her something to eat that is not cat food, like a treat, she won't eat it in the bowl. So I bought these yesterday. I bought these this pack of like chicken slices for sandwiches. And when I looked at it today, I realized the date on the pack was today. So I was like, I'm not going to eat all this before it's gone. So I was like, all right, well, I'll make an extra sandwich and then I'll treat the cat. She likes it. She's not supposed to eat it all the time, but she can have like a one-off, So I got a little handful about the size she'd normally be fed in cat meat, and I put it in her bowl. And I'd come back later and she's removing the slices one at a time, carrying them over to the other side of the room and eating them. And then going back and looking at me like, no, treats go on the carpet, cat food goes in the bowl.
You look at you like, bad human, bad. What have I told you time and time and time again? Can you not understand me? Do you not hear what I'm saying to you, two-legger? Alright, so we're going to do Lucio Ball for
Yeah,
BB.
Let's do it. Oh.
This is for you, BB.
I will when I get out of this matchmaking, because it kicked in already.
But,
BB well says I need to try more characters so I can have more options. Yes, indeed.
Oh, are we getting out of this? Did you leave without the...
No, I only just left and then I did it without you because, yeah.
God damn it, Owen.
Hey, at least I didn't destroy any food. Oh, purple, what do I got? Oh, I got a summer game skin. Oh, it's Lucio.
Oh, okay.
His summer game skin looks just like his normal skin.
Oh, we're gonna open boxes now? Okay, I'm opening boxes.
Yeah,
I only got blue.
Yeah, we're gonna get anything.
I did get the McCree skin, though.
I quite like the McCree skin. It looks like Baywatch.
Oh, just cash. Damn it.
I like the 76 skin. Raise the stakes. He's just barbecuing.
Yeah.
I think it's
There's
hilarious.
another pun on his skin, too. I just don't remember what it was.
So I haven't actually looked at the skins.
Right.
I'm just going to have a quick look at the skins before we play. I haven't actually... Who's got a summer skin?
Sombra.
Okay, Anna doesn't.
Widowmaker.
I'll just go through them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Finally an event. Finally an event in which Bastion did not get a skin. I mean, I like a good Bastion skin, but he seems to get them for everything, right?
Mm-hmm. I think Tracer got a new one, too.
Is this Diva one new? Okay, so this is interesting. This is the second Summer Games event. So here's the question.
But you can get the old ones.
Can you?
I think so.
I have been wondering if this would happen, if you could get the old ones, because we didn't know whether this was going to be the case until recently, did we? You know, this is the first time an event's rolled around twice. Oh, the Genji one's nice. It's pretty plain, but it's nice. Yeah, I didn't think there'd be a Hanzo. We got a Hanzo last time. I love that Hanzo skin.
The Nihon one?
No, the anniversary one. Is that the Nihon one? I don't know. Oh my god,
the Sentai one is the anniversary one.
The Junkrat one's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there was the anniversary that we missed. Or we played a little bit of it.
I got a few skins for it. Oh, there we go. And then we got two Lucio Summer Games skins. Both. Oh. What Lucio one did I just get then? I just got a Lucio skin. And it's none of these. Maybe it was an animation. Oh, it was an animation. That's why it looks the same as the other ones. I thought I got a skin. Oh, well,
alright, should we get into this?
The McCree one's pretty funny, though. The old Summer Games McCree.
Okay, so...
Yeah, let's do it.
This is going to sound really bad, but every time I load up this fucking game now, I get an image of Widowmaker in her bikini. Mm-hmm. Those dimensions change by skin, alright? I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's humble compared to her normal skin, I would say.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that the other skins include a Wonder Bra?
I'm suggesting there might be some padding going on there. Right. Now
the important thing is you noticed. I wasn't paying enough attention. Because I'm not a pervert.
Liar. Why don't you go on for 15 minutes about the robo-tongue? Please.
Robo-tongue. BB's also says, Tracer needs a better one, but I can see why hers is the way it is. Tracer does not have a lot of good skins, I don't think. Tracer and Sombra, I don't think, get good skin choices.
I kind of like Sombra's new skin. It's the scuba diving thing.
I haven't seen it yet. This is the first time I've had a chance to look at the skins. And I'm loading in now, so I haven't looked at them. Hope you guys are having fun, by the way. This is Those Aren't Biscuits. It's a live talk show. We play games while we talk, basically. Mm-hmm. And, yeah. So, have we done the... What was the other film? Did you get to the other film? I forgot.
Not yet. I'm going to take a look through the chat real quick to see if we miss anything.
Okay. Oh, wow. So the first movie released by Alfonso Cuarón...
Yeah, keep going.
Was A Little Princess. Do you remember that film?
Nope.
It was...
Who's Siegel?
What?
Sorry, I'm reading the chat. I'm a Hanzo Main 15 says I'm not as good at Siegel as at Genji, but who's Siegel? I don't know.
Maybe he's not as good as Siegel because it's not a character in the game. I'm gonna be Siegel now. Gah, gah, gah. This is not working.
Mine.
Why? Wait, isn't this just Rocket League?
Pretty much.
Oh, fair enough.
You can't shoot, but you can punch, and you can speed yourself up. a little bit.
Are we all Lucio?
Yep.
Okay, our goal is the red one, right? Not our goal,
Yes.
but the goal we're aiming for.
Okay. Yes.
So how does this work?
We just keep... Oh my god, it is hitting it back and forth. It's just a game of catch right now. Yeah, we got it.
Hey, and we can't hit each other, right?
We can... I think you can daze each other a little bit, but you can't really ain't doing any real damage.
Yay! Overwatch League! Goal?
Oh,
That's not how you spell goal, game.
It's Portuguese.
I didn't know the Portuguese didn't know how to spell goal.
Here.
You learn something new every day. Oh crap.
Oh, shit.
Do we have designated keepers? Save!
Not really.
Save!
Yay,
Shut up!
goal. Gamer Girl is carrying our team right now.
Well done,
Thank
Gamer
you,
Girl.
Gamer Girl. Alright. So I'll start talking about the other movie I saw.
Yeah, do it.
It
Talk.
was,
Talk.
It is the amazing cinema joy.
Cinema Joy. The amazing Cinema Joy. I just want to remind you, by the way, it was your idea that we stop playing games while doing this.
Sorry. I saw a movie called Fist Fight, starring Charlie Day and Ice Cube.
I haven't seen this movie, but I have seen the trailers. It looks sort of enjoyably bad.
You know, and that was kind of my first thought too. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be terrible, right? It's gonna be absolutely terrible.
I'm really hoping you go, and it was.
No, it was actually kind of better than I thought it was gonna be.
That's no fun.
Because they did just enough. Did just enough jokes involving Ice Cube's past as a gangster rapper, mixed with Charlie Day's like I'm gonna ramble through all my lines sort of thing. And it actually went really well. I guess just to go through the plot real quick. They both play teachers at a school that is terrible. The school is terrible, and it's facing all these budget cuts. Excuse me. It's facing all these budget
you
cuts.
jump higher if you're on the yellow pads. That makes sense.
Yep. They're facing all these budget cuts, and they're firing teachers left and right. The students are insane. They've like laid all these booby traps because it's the last day of school, and it's like, oh, we're gonna have our senior pranks and all that. And their pranks are basically, we put tripwires throughout the whole school that when you trip on them, it explodes a can of paint in your face. And like the guidance counselor is actively doing meth, and she doesn't hide it. But it's just the worst school known to man, you know, and like absurdly so. But honestly, not too far away from the realities of public schools in this country. And but what happens is Ice Cube's teacher, who is kind of like this tough guy, doesn't take no shit. He finally has the last straw, and he takes a fire axe to a student's desk and just loses his mind. And, oh my God, this is just going back and forth, people.
Damn it!
You wanted this, BB. You wanted this. But and he wants Charlie Day's character to back him up, say, you know, oh, I didn't see anything. But Charlie Day's character, you know, he's afraid of losing his job.
As you would be.
He has a baby on the way. He already has a daughter. So, thank God. This game is basically Gamer Girl versus the other team. I am not doing anything.
I feel much the same. At least we're gonna get nice, easy loot bugs.
Yeah. Did anyone else actually score a goal yet?
Oh God, no, not yet.
For God's sakes!
Every time I get to it,
you.
Every time I get to it, someone just kicks it from the other side that I never saw. It just goes right over me, and then 30 seconds later, I hear save. That's the entire game for me.
Oh God, we only have 5 seconds left.
Oh,
yay, Gamer Girl.
Hey!
Oh, yeah. You've done 9 games of this, BB? What is... You masochist.
Was Gamer Girl on your games as well? Hey!
Let's go to goal at the very end.
Save!
Are you Gamer Girl, BB? Just...
Oh! Whoa! I was robbed! Should have been me. What?
They're just you and me just running around back and forth.
I don't want to vote for her.
Yeah, there you go. But so of course Charlie Day kind of rats out. Rats out Ice Cube's
I got
character.
one medal, 1 interception, 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 saves, 1 interception. Woo!
I got 2 assists and 3 interceptions.
Fucking A!
Woo!
Ready for the big leagues.
Oh God! Oh God! We're still in this.
Yeah.
Do we do this again?
I want to get better.
Well.
Oh, that was me. I did actually hit the ball and then it went in. I'm helping.
Are you?
Oh, Gamer Girl's on the other team now. Oh no!
Oh no!
Yay!
Hey, he scored a goal.
Who was it? Who's got?
I don't know. Where's Gamer Girl? I wanna wave at her. Like, hey, it's me.
I'm gonna stay in goal.
Okay, I'll go up. Oh God!
No!
Way to go, champ!
I'm not good at this, Jonathan.
Clearly.
They were just like, no, this would be too easy a win.
So anyway, so Charlie Day's character rats out Ice Cube, and Ice Cube basically says, "I'm going to fight you." In the most blatant terms, and he doesn't like beat around the bush. He just goes, "I'm going to fight you," and essentially the rest of the movie is Charlie Day's character losing his fucking mind because he's terrified of getting to this fight, and one thing after another just starts falling apart in the school. And so he starts to try to scheme his way out of the fight, and the schemes lead to more problems. But then you couple this with just these lunatic kids and the school and an administration that doesn't give a shit, and
go, John! It's your birthday! Oh, you
yeah.
suck, John.
Shut up.
Save!
Yeah,
Hey!
fuck you! It is my birthday! But the film is actually filled with a lot of really funny jokes. And it's just one of those things where they weren't afraid to make some of the easier jokes, which I kind of appreciate. Because at one point, Charlie Day's character tries to buy drugs from a student to plant on Ice Cube's character, so Ice Cube gets arrested, and he doesn't have to fight him.
As you do.
And but in the process, so both the cops show up for both of them, and they ask Charlie Day's character like his side of the story, and so he goes through this whole rambling explanation, you know, that just sounded like a crazy person trying to explain what was going on. And then they go to Ice Cube, they're like, what's your side of the story? And Ice Cube looks for a second, and he's just like, looks back and forth, and finally just goes, man, fuck the police. And it's just really fucking funny the way, like, yeah, this is Ice Cube, right? This is the guy who's part of NWA, who, the guy I knew who said, fuck the police. Like, that's what he's, like, famous for. So of course he's gonna say that when confronted by the police officer in this comedy movie.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I loved it. And there's just other little bits throughout the movie where as Charlie Day's character is losing his mind, you know, and he's kind of fuck.
We did not do well.
No. Oh, and we get to, yep. Oops.
Yay!
As he's losing his mind, like when he's trying to buy the drugs from this kid's already blackmailed him once for like a MacBook Pro, and so he goes to buy the drugs from the same kid, and the kid's like, "Oh, I want an iPhone 7." Charlie Day just grabs the kid, picks him up, slaps him across the face, and is like, "Fuck you, Steven," and then walks away with the drugs. No one defend. Everyone on attack.
Great strategy, John.
We didn't have time to implement.
You know what? I don't want to do another round of this.
I don't either. Oh, whatever. We got a minute and a half left, or whatever.
This reminds me of playing Rocket League again.
I like Rocket League. I don't like this.
Yeah, but I was just as bad at Rocket League.
Oh, shit. I keep on forgetting what the punch button is.
I keep forgetting if you're supposed to punch or do the other thing. The woomph.
The woomph.
Oh, have you got a better name for it?
I don't know, the shockwave?
Yeah, that's what I said. The woomph.
Ooh, the woomph. Oh my god, make it end. But yeah, I mean, it's the typical, though, like, you know, raunchy humor movie. So it has that going for it, you know, like, the guidance counselor who's also doing meth is openly admitting that she's waiting for a certain student to turn 18 so she can fuck his brains out. Like... And, like, even though she, like, fully admits that she does meth, when Charlie Day tries to get meth from her so he can implement this, like, this scheme, she's like, well, no, I'm on meth, but I don't do drugs at school. What the fuck am I, irresponsible? Like...
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It looked kind of terrible.
Not the greatest movie of... It's not the greatest movie of all time, but, you know, it has its moments.
Beaviswell says, I use the woomph maw. There we go. 2 votes for woomph.
Oh my god. Woomph. Woomph.
I actually saw a similar sort of genre of movie recently, although it was not as good. It started off okay. I saw Bad Moms.
Oh, that looked terrible.
It was actually okay. It didn't maintain the quality, shall we say.
Hey, Jade's World. Welcome.
Welcome. So, we said before we began that you have a hard limit today. Could I ask what it is? How much more time you got? Or do we need to start wrapping up?
I have an hour. I have roughly an hour. The reason I have a hard limit, it's nothing serious, but I have a board meeting I have to attend.
Board meeting? Fair enough.
I might have mentioned it, I might have mentioned it before, but I am on the board of directors for a community theater group, which I'm actually kind of proud of, so.
Well done. Do we have anything else to talk about? I don't know. I feel we should... I don't know. Where we go next with this, John?
Well, here, let's open it up to some questions. First off. Alright, we have a few people in there. We have 9 people watching. So, please hit those like buttons and please subscribe. And this is an interactive show, so if you have any comments, please lay it on us and we will talk to you. We'll answer your questions. We'll give you our views on things or whatever. I don't know. I'm kind of I do kind of want to talk about the Charlottesville thing.
Okay. I'll tell you what. We've been streaming for an hour and 40 minutes.
Or an hour and a half. Yeah.
Let's go to the 2-hour mark. You can say what you want to say, and then we'll wrap up. What do you reckon?
Fair enough.
I think that's a good thing. Shall I get the game going again? Oh,
yeah,
I went into quick play. No, I want arcade.
Mm-hmm. So, if you don't know, there was kind of a bit of a horrific incident that happened in America the other day. And horrific, I think, is a light term for what happened. To kind of break it down for those who might not know, there was a planned demonstration by neo-Nazis / alt-right white supremacists. Essentially, they were there to protest the removal of a statue that depicted a Civil War general that fought for the Confederacy, which, in layman's terms, they're the ones who are like fighting for slavery, you know?
Right.
Some people try to dress it up and like, oh, they're fighting for states' rights and trying to, eliminate the federal government. No,
the state's right to own slaves.
Right. And there's been a big push lately to move these statues across the country, because there's a lot of them. Especially in the South, which is where the Confederacy came from. And people are kind of getting fed up with these statues, and they, and I agree. I don't think these statues should exist.
Oh, damn it, we're reloading. Sorry, carry on.
For one reason, yeah, we're talking about the army who essentially fought for slavery. And that's not okay. 2, what fucking country in their right mind has memorials to the opposing side? Right? The Confederacy lost. They lost the war. So, they formed their own country during the Civil War. They are an opposing force to the United States of America.
Right.
We don't have statues of Tojo. We don't have statues of Hitler. We don't have statues of Rommel or Ho Chi Minh. Any we don't have these. We have all these statues of Confederate generals and soldiers, and that's not okay. Like, you can't have it. And there's a lot of people who go, well, it's history. You know, you're eliminating history. It's not. The history's still there. The history exists in textbooks and Wikipedia articles and all these other forms. You still have that history, and the history should be taught.
Right.
You don't have memorials to them. You don't have monuments celebrating, because that's what monuments are. They're celebrations of people. They're not.
Right. It's like
monuments aren't history.
Right. I mean, for example, we had a civil war in the UK, but it's not the same as the American Civil War. It didn't split the country. It was a civil war over what would be the structure of government, you know? Mm-hmm. And so, for example, you do still see commemorations to Oliver Cromwell, but Oliver Cromwell was still a head of state of this state.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the war wasn't over... The war wasn't... The English Civil War wasn't over fundamental rights of people living in the country. It was, well, unless you count the right to not be ruled by a monarch. You know what I mean? The English Civil War was over different forms of government, you know? But yeah, sorry, continue.
Right. Well, as BB says, shouldn't the statues be in museums or something? Yeah, that's a more proper place for those things.
Right, no one's saying grind the statue to dust.
Some are.
Okay, well, yeah, fair enough.
And to be fair, I'm kind of more on that side. You know, I'd rather see it destroyed, honestly, than... And this might seem extreme, I admit. But I'd rather see these statues removed and destroyed than put up in public parks and things like that.
Right, like, I mean...
If you put them in a museum... What you're doing is you're putting a barrier, essentially, from the public and the people who want to see the statue and learn about it from a historical standpoint or whatever has to make the effort to see it. They're not just there in public spaces.
Right, I mean, I'm not American. I won't claim to be entirely up on this issue, but isn't this really part of the long-standing issue of many groups and communities in the South essentially trying to reframe the Civil War in a sense where not that they didn't lose, but that even though they lost, the question was not settled. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing wrong was done. And that they are it still represents their identity in the South to associate with the Confederacy.
It's very much they try to frame it in a sense of not about what the war was actually fought over, but the fact that they rebelled, and they like to hang on to this concept of rebellion, right? The proud rebels of the South, and the South will rise again. You know, we were going to take shit from the federal government, and that, you know, and yeah. So what happened was this group was there to protest the statue, right? But the night before there, here's the thing: America has in our Constitution the right to free assembly, peaceful assembly, and free speech. So if you want to have a demonstration, you know, you go to your local town hall and say, hey, we're gonna have a demonstration at this time at this place, and typically the town hall goes, okay, all right, thank you for letting us know. And it's not in terms of getting... A lot of people go, oh, well, they shouldn't need permission to do this. Well, the idea behind it is public safety, you know?
Right, and to let people know for a courtesy that you're going to be there, so... Yeah.
Right. This is, you know, this isn't uncommon. This is how things have been, you know, for a long time.
Right, and so from what I understand, they asked them to move the demonstration festival?
The night before, they decided to hold another rally. Not just their planned protest, but the night before they had another rally where they all got together with tiki torches at night and marched onto the place that they were going to be protesting. And it's actually, if you see the pictures of it, it's actually a very, very scary sight, because you just see a bunch of angry white dudes with torches marching down the street, you know?
Right, I've seen the
like
picture.
a mob.
Yeah. Which is the intention, I think.
Oh, I imagine. Oh, that was a waste. And so counter protests sprang up. You know, liberal, you know, essentially, you know, left-wing liberal groups and human rights groups and things like that got together and like, we're going to protest. This is very common whenever these you know, KKK and neo-Nazis decide to hold a rally. There's always counter protesters. It happens all the time. Things got violent though, and right from the get-go, there was fistfights breaking out and people throwing things at each other, and it was just a very ugly scene from the get-go. It kind of got even worse though, because one of these alt-right white supremacist neo-Nazis fucktards took it upon themselves to drive a car through a group of these counter-protesters, and someone was killed. A young woman was murdered. 13 people were injured, and it's horrific. It's like, this is, and it's just, I think, you know, you can say a lot of things. You know, 9/11 was a dark time in our history, but because of something that was done to us. This is perhaps one of the darkest moments, because it's Americans doing this to other Americans, and it's domestic terrorism at its most basic sense. And what makes it even more horrible is we have a president now who didn't immediately outright condemn it. You know, the most basic thing that he could have done is said domestic terrorism and neo-Nazis and white supremacy has no place in this country. Everyone else did it. You know, whether or not they believed it or not, everyone else did it. The president didn't, and almost in fact made it worse, because his initial response was, there's been incidents of violence on both sides, and they're both people essentially saying, oh, everyone's kind of in the wrong here. And, like, you don't play the middle ground with, you don't play, you don't play middle of the aisle when it comes to terrorism. You don't play moderate with acts of violence of this nature.
Right.
You don't do it. Not from a political standpoint, not from a decency standpoint. Like, it's insanity to me. It's just pure, unadulterated insanity. And it's just, I don't get it anymore. I don't get my country.
Well,
I said a lot of like doom and gloom, you know, when Trump was elected, but a lot of that was hyperbole, on my part, and I admit to that, and a lot of it was done for a comedic purpose. Oh man, but I am 100% when I say this is that I don't think my country has an identity anymore. It just, or if it does, it's one I don't want to be part of. Just this really hurts me. In a real feel.
No, I know what you mean.
It's
not comparable, but it's similar to in the post-Brexit when everyone in the country voted for something that was so fundamentally stupid. Do you know what I mean? Because they don't like immigrants. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was a similar thought,
Mm-hmm. I'm really at a loss for and it's one of the things where this has really been weighing on me a lot since it happened, and I just haven't really known how to think about it. I've been trying to, and this is the worst thing you can do, people. It's the worst thing to do, but I've done it. I've tried to just turn my brain off. I really have, because it's the shit, man. Like it gets to me hard.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
it's one of those realizations for me, and I'll explain. And I'll let you talk.
No, go for it.
Ranting here.
You talk.
There was always this thing in the back of my mind, when I'd see terrible things going on when I was growing up, or instances of intolerance and racism, and things like that. And here's the thing: I am a white male. I myself have not been the victim of these things a lot, but I've witnessed them from afar, and they still hurt to watch, albeit not, I imagine, not nearly as painful to receive them. But there's always a thought in the back of my head of, well, clearly my generation is not the ones doing this. We just kind of have to wait out these elder generation. Maybe they'll die off, or they'll just stop participating, or whatever. Right. I was always in the back of my head that you just had to wait out the elder generation. And seeing this, and seeing the faces in this crowd of white supremacists, and you see a lot of young people, made me realize that my generation is not going to be the one who makes these problems go away. We are not going to do it. And it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking to know that it's going to have to be someone else.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. When I was in school, you knew racist people. Do you know what I mean? You went to school with... But there always seemed to be, a distinct minority. And then you think that...
Thank you, BB, by the way. Thank you.
You think that it's over. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's such a small minority, and that the consensus has been so overwhelming. For me, it started with the Gamergate stuff, definitely. That was when it started to become clear to me that it wasn't... That what I had always thought of as, a consensus of how people felt wasn't... It was just me. It was just how me and people in my circle felt. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I had taken it for granted for a long time that people felt the same way. And were all genuinely most people were on board with this whole don't be racist thing, And then one day you realize that most people aren't. A lot of people are, and a lot of people aren't. And there isn't as much ground covered as you think between those two people. Mm-hmm. And I think there's even been a backlash in that I think maybe 20 years ago we were closer than we are now.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have a couple of comments. If you want to... Oh, okay. No. So, do you want me to do them?
By all means. Yeah, go for it.
BB's World said a few things. The question is, why now? I mean, they've been around a long time. I'm wondering why the issues arise now. That's in reference to the Civil War statues. That was from a while ago. You want to talk about that? We don't have Civil War statues here. You're going to have to cover that one yourself.
I'll basically say is that people got sick. People got sick and tired of it. For a very long time, minority groups, especially, were not necessarily told, but it was kind of expected that they're like, okay, well, this isn't that time anymore, right? You know, this isn't, you know, my ancestors, or my ancestors might have owned slaves, but I don't. You know, don't make a big deal about it. It's over with. Move on. But you don't. You like that's a silly thing to suggest. Like, this is part of people's cultural heritage and history, and to suggest, oh, just move on is to suggest to move on from something far more than just a statue. It's what the statue represents, and the reason why it's become more of an issue is, well, to be as blunt, we had a black president. All right, we had a black president. The highest position of this country was a minority for 8 years. So a lot of people aren't accepting, oh, just let it go anymore.
Right. I think it's also fair to say that minorities in general have a greater political voice, and in the age of the internet, the organization is easier for smaller groups as well. So minorities have more political voice than they would have had 20, 30 years ago. What else we got here? Was the demonstration unlawful? I don't think it was, to begin with, right?
No, okay, the torch thing was. The torch thing was unlawful.
Which makes sense.
And, but the actual plan thing was not unlawful. And, you know, and here's the thing, like, I will never give these people the benefit of the doubt. But their protest was lawful, and the counter-protests, in a sense, were not. But it's one of those things where, you know, once it starts, it's a fire. The police and the officials, you know, overseeing everything, their job is simply to make sure no one gets hurt. You know, they're not going to try to, you know, stop a counter-protest, you know. And okay, and here's the thing, I'm not gonna say that, I'm not going to say that there wasn't violence on both sides. There was. I've seen the videos, I've seen the pictures, I've seen people on both sides, you know, doing things that maybe they shouldn't have. But only one representative from one side took it as far as murder, you know?
Right.
And, you know, that's the kind of the world we live in these days, honestly. When you have a president who not only refuses to condemn this stuff, but in a sense represents it, what you're basically doing is you're opening the floodgates to extremism.
Right.
It's, you know, it's the same, and I know a lot of people are not gonna be able to see this, but it is the same. It's the same reason why certain countries in the Middle East seem to be hotbeds for Islamic extremism, because they have governments that endorse it, or may not endorse, but represent the same ideal.
Right.
And we're seeing this now, that we have a government now that is, you know, generally they're kind of okay with it.
Right, because it represents a large amount of the voter base.
Right.
And Trump himself is fairly bigoted.
Yes. So what that does, it kind of, you know, I'm not saying that the person who did this wouldn't have done this anyways at a certain point, but I think with the political climate and who we have in office now, he probably was a little bit more willing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird coming to it from an outsider position because, I mean, I wouldn't dream to suggest for a moment that Britain doesn't have comparable problems with racists. We absolutely do. Mm-hmm. But obviously we don't have the same north-south divide, you know what I mean? It's tough to come to an outsider and comment on it. You know, you can only speak in general terms, you know? Mm-hmm. But, for example, we haven't had outright... we haven't had Trump-level bigots in Parliament, but we did... Well, I say Parliament. In government... But we did have, for example, the dominance of UKIP over the years and the Brexit vote absolutely emboldened people. I mean, the day after the Brexit vote cleared, there were people accosting immigrants in the streets, telling them, Brexit is here now, we've taken back control, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's a frightening thing to see things change like that. There is a comment I do want to address from BB's World that says, things tend to get violent when anti-fat gets involved. From what I've heard, it's so sad that people died over this. I have a real problem with that. Anti-fat, if you haven't heard it, is basically what all people who oppose the alt-right have now been classified under, short for anti-fascist. And there is a growing attempt to categorize... It's the same thing with Gamergate. Do you remember how with Gamergate the ongoing thing was, there are two sides and they're both equal, right?
Right.
Therefore, Gamergate managed to avoid so much accountability for the things it did by characterizing everybody who was opposed to it as one single homogenous group who's equally culpable, because then any bad elements in anyone who disagreed with Gamergate were automatically part of this anti-Gamergate group they identified, they labeled, and therefore it helped build this narrative of two identical groups who have identical aims. Therefore they are in cahoots, do you know what I mean? Like, they are equally culpable. And the anti-fat thing is the same thing. It's actually a really gross way. Like, for example, I don't go to counter protests, right? But I'm anti-fascism, do you know what I mean? But I don't belong to a group. But the idea is that when neo-Nazis and nationalists and white supremacists march together, they have formed a group. You know what I mean? Every group that doesn't agree with them isn't one coherent group that is therefore part of a homogenous counter unit. But it's kind of gross anyway. I mean, it's mostly... The issue with this is, and this is the difficult thing, when you stage a peaceful... And this is where the question of peaceful protest gets a little bit difficult. Because what fascists do is they stage peaceful protests saying things like black people don't deserve the same rights as white people, and then when their peaceful protest is opposed, their defense is violence was used against us when we ourselves were not violent, right?
Right.
Despite the fact that what they're actually calling for is an incitement to violence. And that distinction is important. Now, I'm not saying, as some people have gone out of their way to say, that therefore it is okay to beat and abuse fascists who are peacefully protesting. I don't have an answer on the ethics of that. And I think maybe the answer is that violence begets violence, and that's not how you should behave and things like that. But what you can't make the mistake of doing is believing that someone who stands on a street and says, "Death to all Jews," as an example, is behaving non-violently.
Right.
Because that is a... BBswell says, "Oh, I thought Anti-Fat were an organized group of extreme leftists that were militarizing themselves. I must be thinking of someone else. I didn't think Anti-Fat was a blanket term, sorry." No, I hate to say this, B, because it sounds so condescending, but I sort of feel like you've fallen for the propaganda a little bit, to be honest. There isn't... I mean, there are militant leftist groups, in the same way there are militant rightist groups, but this Antifa thing, is a term created by the right wing to undermine the left. In the same way that insisting on calling alt-right people all Nazis is the same thing on the left, and I think they are not. Being from the left, I think they are. A lot of them are Nazis, and they meet the definition. But it's I don't know. It's tough. I find this a very difficult conversation to talk about because I don't know where I land on it. Because, like you, I sort of didn't expect to be having to deal with outright Nazis. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not ready to have the conversation about how you deal with Nazis because I didn't think it was going to come up. Right. But this Antifa thing is so strange to me that they've managed to turn being anti-fascism into a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like,
well, okay. Let me first say that I'm not a violent person. I don't believe in the use of violence.
No, I would also agree with that.
Yes, defense, that's one thing. You know, if you get into a fist fight, you get into a fist fight. It happens.
Right, this is the common answer, isn't it? You say you're non-violent, and then someone always says, so you want to abolish all the armies? Well, no.
Right, no. I'd
just like to avoid using them, if possible.
So I don't immediately, like, I'm not going to pardon people or anti-fascists who resort to violence as a first means, you know?
Right. And I agree.
You know, there's a thing, you know, when they go low, we go high. You know, but the big difference here, I think that people realize is that anti-fascists are essentially they're against an abstract, right? Fascism is a political model, philosophy, you know, whatever you want to call it, and you can be against that, right? These alt-right people and fascists themselves are against people, an actual people based on color of their skin or religion or something like that. You know, so that's kind of what their whole game is based on, is hate. They're based on being against people because of who they are. And I think as right-thinking people, as humans, you have to be anti that.
Right. It's like this whole conversation about is it okay to punch Nazis that keeps coming up, right? Like, I will say as a principle that I think this is where I've resolved to settle on this issue. As a principle, I don't believe that punching people unsolicited is the right way to behave. But when it comes to punching Nazis, and I'm not going to say that this is an exception, I'm going to say, like, I think that's a principle and it should be applied in all situations. But I'm not going to go around feeling sorry for the Nazi that got punched. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's where you got to lie with it. I don't necessarily think it's the best action, in part because I think it kind of helps them. But you have to remember that this is someone who is calling for the death and disenfranchisement of others based on the color of their skin. You know?
Right. And let's be real honest with ourselves, people. We fought a war against this ideal.
Right.
This fascism was something that your country, my country, New Zealand, Australia, France, we all, as we thought it was okay to wage war against this ideal, this principle. You know, our countries, our governments, our armies were all Antifa. You
Right.
know? I'm not calling for us to go out with guns and fight them on it, but I think it's everyone's responsibility to resist it. You know?
Right. It's a tough thing because on the one hand, and this is something I've talked about in the past about how we fetishize free speech. You know what I mean? And it's that old thing where people say, "Is it okay to shout fire in a crowded theater?" Right? Like that's the
Right.
when there isn't a fire. That's the token example of a limitation on free speech we should all agree with, right? But I think then there's kind of this weird thing where do you have to install other limitations on free speech where you say, you know what? It's not okay to say some types of humans are less worthwhile inherently than others. And that once you cross that line, you should no longer have a right to free speech. Do you know what I mean? Like, is this actually really another barrier where we need to qualify that? Do you know what I mean? And I don't even have an opinion yet. But I think people have made good cases that... Here's the thing I think is most important about the issue when we get to Nazis and fascism, which is that they have proven time and time again that if you allow them the free speech, they will use it to create footholds. And then they'll use it to remove the free speech of others. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it's what they call the tolerance paradox, which is when a tolerant society is ultimately destroyed by the intolerant through their tolerance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's...
Well, and that is absolutely a modus operandi of these groups, is
Right.
that they utilize the laws in their favor. You know, yes, they have the right to, you know, peaceful assembly, and they go and they get approved for these rallies and whatnot, and then they utilize the rallies that have been, you know, essentially approved to do heinous things. And then when it's opposed, I mean, you said this earlier. I'm just kind of reiterating what you said. But the minute you oppose it and you resist it, they use that against you, you know, because now you're not law-abiding. Now you're trying to censor them. You're trying to remove their rights.
Right.
And
Much better.
it's just a real hard position.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, what do you do when someone doesn't respect... When someone who doesn't respect the right to free speech in others wants to use it as a protection for themselves? How do you work around that and respect those rights when what that person wants to use the free speech to do is ultimately gain enough influence to remove others of that right? How do you work from that?
Yeah, it's...
I don't have an answer.
No, and that's the thing. I don't think they exist. You know, I just don't think that we have a right answer, because, I mean, I don't mean to... No, fuck, I do. These alt-ring people, they don't use logic. They don't use their beliefs are not based on science or reason. They're based on base fear and emotion and the horrific things that their parents have told them and propaganda. And so it's why they always seem so sure-footed of all their beliefs, is because it's gone beyond like a political ideology. It's almost religious truth for them. And
all you have to do is pretend that it's simple. Because people prefer simple answers to complicated ones. That just goes something BB said, she said in chat, "It feels so weird to hear people say fascism is bad. It feels like a lesson we learned such a long time ago. It's quite possible that I've only heard the propaganda, not many people talk about it. I get most of my info from Sargon. He is very persuasive. If you have anyone else I should listen to get a balance, I would love to hear it." Well, this is a toughie because
I have something to say about that. I saw that before and I kind of thought of wanted to say.
Okay. Do you know who Sargon is? Because I think that's worth mentioning.
I don't. But I kind of get the idea that it's kind of like a pundit.
His name is Sargon of Akkad, and he made his name essentially... he's talked about different things over the years, but he made his name criticizing predominantly transgender feminists. He's one of those people who takes a video, lets the person talk for a bit, pauses the video, makes a snarky comment that makes it look simple, and then stops. But he is, in my opinion, the worst. Like, just one of the worst people in the world. He is willfully deceptive very frequently. But yeah, carry on.
My answer to this is don't. Don't seek out someone for a balance.
No. That was going to be my answer too, but yeah, carry on.
And this is a lot of our problems come from this very issue. We let others speak for us far too often.
Right.
I think the much better approach is if it's a topic you do not know much about, take the time to read about it. Take the time to learn what you can.
From more than one person.
Yes, from more than one person, and then make your own judgment on it. When everyone in this day and age, and I'm not just saying one side or the other or anything like that, we're all victims, or not victims, we're all guilty, I should say, of hearing something catchy, something that sounds immediately right in our ears, and holding that to be the god-awful truth.
Right.
And often, it's not.
I'm going to back out of this matchmaking here, by the way, because I have to finish soon, but I'm going to let you finish what you're saying.
You have to be willing to put in the work these days. Because, I mean, news isn't what it used to be. You're not going to get... you're not going to get a balanced response on the news. It doesn't matter what source you're getting it from. It's not going to be there.
Right.
You have to read the reports of what happened and then come to your own conclusion.
Yeah, and I do have a few things to add myself. BB says it can be hard to find sources free of opinion. Oh yeah, almost impossible. That's why you got to get many different ones, you know? But what I will say is specifically to Sargon, the reason he's so persuasive is he presents his videos free of accountability. So he takes someone else's video that he's already seen, and he takes it away and he writes a script and he makes notes, and then he edits the other person's video, and sometimes deceptively, but what he does is he never lets their complete point be shown. He stops in and refutes line by line by line, makes himself look clever, but he's in control of the flow of how that conversation goes, completely start to finish. And so it is a persuasive way to make an argument. But Sargon himself is... he likes to lean on his credibility of being, I am a classic liberal, basically. But because these days... all these left-wingers, SJWs, are so wacky. They've driven all us classic liberals away and blah, 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 blah. And he takes this major issue with identity politics and all this stuff. But he is one source and one person. And his entire shtick is to take something somebody says and says, no, you're wrong. But he never asserts things with evidence to his points. He just... says, no, you're wrong. He has a lot of issues with transgender people, a lot of issues with things like that. But most of his issues, as they relate to people like SJWs, comes from either a sense that they are censoring him, which is a common Gamergate complaint, or that their personal expression of identity is not, quote-unquote, in line with his scientific conclusions, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really work like that. Unfortunately,
he is, from what it sounds like, he is kind of this new wave of political commentator that has sprung up. That have utilized the new media, the YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, because while these platforms offer amazing access for everyone, it kind of puts everyone on a very same level, right? It's also the most easily manipulated formats. An example I can think of, especially on Twitter, is a guy who goes by the name Ben Shapiro, who, for all accounts purposes, he is an educated, intelligent person who happens to be a conservative with strong conservative leanings, but he is very good at picking and choosing articles from the opposite side that, one, either are poorly written, poorly thought of, and then he'll share them and then make like a really witty quip about them, right? It's a very sarcastic sort of feel, which he does this to essentially discredit the whole side using the worst examples he can.
Right.
And that is incredibly common across social media. And it makes it all a minefield, essentially.
Right. I think what Sargon of Akkad's favorite tactic seems to be is he takes videos that are free of context and then he reframes what the intention of the video often is. So the ones I've seen the most of his are the ones that are aimed at transgender people. And so a common trope he'll do is someone who's making a video on trans issues will mention that gender is not inherently binary, because that's important to the subject. And he'll pause the video and say, no, there are only two genders. He's partly the source of that meme, you know? The there are only two genders meme. Now, that's factually incorrect, as modern scientific consensus goes. And that's just not just my opinion, that's anyone working in both sociological science, psychology, gender psychology, the brain. It just doesn't work like that.
Historically as well.
And historically, it just doesn't work like that, and it never has. It's factually incorrect. But because he gets to make videos week after week after week, reiterating this point, and he never has to address the science, all he has to do is pause the video and say, no, unless you are intersex, which is a deformity of a kind, you are either male or female. It's the only one who goes, that's the only way it's ever been. and he only talks to his audience, and he's not going to show the video from these other people where they explain this or they talk about the science. He gets to dominate that point within his framework. And he looks like he makes sense because, hey, look at this wacky clip I showed you that was 3 seconds long without context or evidence, and then I say the thing that happens to fit in with everything you've been taught your whole life, you know? It's like, for example, the most simple thing about trans issues is that there is a thing called gender dysphoria. It exists. It is, you can call it a mental illness if you like, I don't know, I don't really care, but it is a condition where you are born associating with the gender other than the one you were born with, and every bit of science that's ever been done on it produces one solid fact, which is the only way to successfully treat it, much like reparative gay therapy, you know, it doesn't work. The only way to successfully, quote-unquote, treat it is to transition to living as the other gender. That's the only thing that works, right? That's, you know? And yet, so much criticism of transgender activists and SJWs is asserting the opposite of that without evidence, based on common sense. And that's why you can't rely on common sense, because unfortunately, a lot of the things that seem so inherently true about our society are counterintuitive and not true. It just doesn't work like that. Much of that is asserting common sense and then never backing it up, but just asserting it often enough that it becomes pleasant to hear, you know?
And just to kind of add to all this is that so much of the issues, I mean, I'm not sure how we end up on the trans issue thing, but...
it's because it's one of Sargon's big bugbears and he annoys me.
Just to kind of add it, in terms of the transgen, just to add my thing, is that there's a lot of issues as people who are opposed to trans rights and the existence of trans people and all this fun stuff is semantics. There is a difference between gender and genitals. Gender is a social construct. Genders are, at their heart, labels that are placed on to identify a difference.
Right.
But that's all they are. They aren't biological. Genders are not biological. Your sex organs and your genitals are.
Right. And all it takes is one person in the entirety of human history to break out of one of those categories, and it's no longer a binary.
Right. It's as if there's no difference in calling a female because she has a vagina as opposed to a penis than there is to call someone a female or male depending on their handedness, right?
Right.
It can be exactly the same thing. If someone was born left-handed, socially they could have said, okay, you are a female because you are left-handed. Right? That's how this goes. And that's what gender is. Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I do have to go, unfortunately.
As do I.
We got very political there for a little bit, but I'm going to close this out. Check out Jonathan on all the places where you can find Jonathan. Tell us, John.
You can find me on my blog, which is johncperson.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, and I would love it if you did that, which is @JohnCPerson, and you can hear more of me on this very channel, because I'm the one doing the Let's Plays here.
You can indeed.
And very soon, my Pyre playthrough will be coming to an end on the Let's Plays, and there'll be a brand new game starting very soon.
Yay!
And so, if you haven't liked and subscribed already, please do so now to this channel so you can be in on that right when it starts.
All right.
When can they find you?
Well, you can go to my YouTube channel at that's this channel. At youtube.com/Owen Adams, and that's pretty much all I do outside this channel, really. I'm I'm a hermit. But I will be doing a stream, by the way. I was actually supposed to be starting it now, but I'll be doing a stream in about 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes over there, once I've got time to restructure these things, of Sonic Mania, which is, if it's unlocked. It might not have unlocked yet, but we'll see. So check it out, and subscribe to our channel, because it's awesome, and that is pretty much everything. We'll be back next week, and hopefully, if John ever watches The Simpsons, God, John, we'll have our new Simpsons show coming up soon. I'm kidding, take your time, I really don't mind.
Yeah. I will do whatever I want.
Okay. Start with the Christmas episode, though. That's the first one.
Sure. Okay.
All right.
All right. Yep. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one.
Bye, guys.